So I went outside and I tried to get in my vehicle, and he follows me behind, and I'm opening the door to get in the truck, and he's right here next to me, and he tells me, don't leave like that. His words were like, don't leave like that. You're not right. You're not emotionally stable. Don't leave. He throws himself to the floor, and somehow I managed to grab my phone. I ran across the street, but by the time I ran across the street, he was already on the phone calling the cops. He called the cops and he told them that I pulled his hair and that I pushed him to the ground. The cops get there, they're talking to me, they're asking me questions, and they're asking my kids questions and him questions. And I'm thinking they're gonna help me. And I finished the conversation with the cops, and another cop shows up, and she tells me, "Are you Vianey?" Yes. Are you aware of what's happening? Yes. Okay, turn around. You're being arrested.
Throughout the hard times, we're still making changes. Find the ways to help each other, many similar faces. There's a way, meditation and pray. God could pave the way, many better days in a peaceful place where we lay.
I had no idea why I was being arrested, why I was getting taken to jail if I didn't do nothing. I was just trying to leave. I was trying to protect myself and trying to protect my children because I thought I was going to lose them and I didn't want to sign this paper. So I got taken in, put me behind the car, and I was just crying and crying and crying. We get to the police station. I ended up staying there for a few hours. Luckily, my brother was able to bail me out. I got out, and my life just completely changed. The next day I got out, there was a restraining order against me. I wasn't able to see my kids, and my whole life, like, just if I already had experienced all this trauma, at that moment it just broke me. And I was grateful because my brother was able to help me out. My mom was there. My dad was still not there, but my family, my brother and my mom were there. So that's all that mattered to me. So right away I also went and I put a restraining order on him. And I didn't know how the system works. I didn't know how a restraining order worked. I didn't know any of that. I just kind of went along with it. And if somebody gave me some advice, I went with it. And by the end of January of the year 2020, I went into court and they tell me, Vianey, you no longer have physical or sole custody of your children, of your 4 boys. I remember that day after court, I went into full shock. The first thing I wanted to do was drink and drink and drink. And it was a very hard moment for me because I didn't know how to control my emotions. I didn't know what to do. I thought I just lost my kids. And I lost my kids to a man who hurt my kids and who hurt me. And now these people in court are telling me that I'm the bad person, that I'm the abuser, I'm the person that caused harm, and they took my children from me. And all I wanted was to protect my kids and to be there for them and to get myself mentally, better for them. And here's this judge telling me, you no longer have rights over your children. So I started drinking, and I started drinking a lot, and I started smoking weed, and I started, just thinking horrible thoughts. I wanted to die. I wanted to just, I would think, like, why should I even be here? My kids don't need me. They have the best dad. They have this God. They have, they have everything. They don't need me. And in my mind, I was like, well, he used to tell me I'm a bad mother, so I'm a bad mother. They don't need me. If I die, it's going to be all right. And, I didn't have legal custody of my children. So this judge decided that I needed to go and have monitored visits. So a monitored visit is when you go to this house or this place and this person watches over you while you interact with your children. And I had to pay for it out of pocket. I had to pay $320 every week to see my kids for 4 hours. And I would only see, sometimes I would see my two youngest, sometimes I would see all four of them, but it was never all of them together. And even if I had one chance, that one chance was always my kids crying. They were upset. They were under a lot of stress. They didn't want to sit there and have somebody write everything they did down. So that continued for a few months. And it was extremely hard for me. It was the toughest thing I've ever had to do. I had to put on this face for my kids when we were in visitations, and I had to be happy. And, I just tried my best to show them as much love. And I always tried to bring new things to the visit so that they would interact with me, coloring books. I would bring toys. The monitor would always give me new ideas, like, hey, why don't you try this? And try to avoid talking about that. And don't bring up their dad or stuff like that. But I was angry this whole time, and all I wanted to do was, get back at their dad. All I wanted to do was hurt him how he hurt me. So visitations were pretty hard. It was stressful, and it was also stressful on me, aside from everything, because I had to always pay these $320 to see my children, which I thought, why do I have to pay to see my children? And then go to court, and it was just so much. So the visitations started getting really, really hard for me. It was to the point where I'm like, I don't want to hurt my children when we go to visits. They're gonna just be sad and they're gonna be mad. So I didn't want to go. I would still do it, but I didn't want to go. And right after visitation, which was usually Saturdays, I would take off and I would go with my boyfriend at the time, and I would tell him, hey, let's go drink. And we would just go drink, and I would black out. And during the time that I was drinking, my boyfriend had his girls over his house. So this night, I was really drunk, and I was really sad, and I was crying and crying and crying, and I had a bottle of pills. And I don't even remember what kind of pills they were, but I remember my boyfriend being on the bed. His girls were there too. We were all in the room, and it was late, and his girls were awake, and I'm over here drunk, crying, and I grab all these pills, and I start, just taking them, and I'm a mess. I'm crying. I just want to die. And they were all present, and they all saw this side of me, and I didn't care. I was like, I'm just going to take these pills, and I'm just going to die. I want to die. I don't want to be in this world. Nobody needs me. My kids don't need me. The justice system obviously does not need another woman, like this in this world. So I just wanted to die. And my boyfriend took the pills from me, and I remember him being super mad, and he was he wasn't mad. He was just sad. He didn't know how to help me. And he told me, just go to sleep. I ended up going to sleep, and I woke up the next day feeling like crap because I had done this in front of him and his daughters. And they never once judged me. They never once questioned why I did what I did. They knew the pain that I was in. And they were just the greatest support system. And I think in a way, they just gave me my space. And it wasn't just one time that this happened. I tried with the pills. I used to drive with my truck, and we lived in Menifee, so over there's a lot of mountains, and there's a lot of places where you can just drive and nobody will even see you. And I remember always taking off at night and just driving over there and just saying, this is it. I'm gonna end this. I couldn't take the pain of seeing my kids going to visits and putting them through that stress. Not only did I feel bad for putting them through that stress, but it was a constant, their dad knew what to tell them so that when they came to the visit, they would tell me, and they would tell me things like, you're a bad mom. You're this, you're that. Why do you put us through all this pain? Why are you causing us this pain? And it was like they weren't doing it to me. I knew it was him, but it was these reminders of what I went through with him. So then, a few months went by, and the court decided that they wanted to do a mediation. And in this mediation, what they do is this person comes and they pretty much um, they look at what's happening with your interactions with your children. So we were in this room. I get there, and I'm walking through the courthouse, and it's my two kids with their dad. And I go to the receptionist. I'm like, okay, I'm here. And she's like, oh, you're late. Like, I'm late. It said 8:30. She's like, no, the appointment was at 8. So I guess there was a miscommunication, and I was already late. And they tell me, okay, you need to go in this room. And the lady that was doing the mediation, she was very, very, very rude. Like, okay, get in there now. So I go in this mediation room, and my kids are there. They put out some like little blocks, and I had brought pictures for my kids so they could see like what the happy moments that we had together. And I'm interacting with my kids, and I'm trying to do my best, but I was being very aggressive. Like, I was like, come on, boys, look at these pictures. Come on, remember when we were doing this, or remember when we were doing that? Nobody told me that I had to behave myself in a certain way during these mediations. Nobody told me that this mediation was gonna pretty much be a deciding factor for me to have my children or not. So I'm here being this aggressive mom, trying to be very like persistent with my children. And my kids were like, why are you trying to be the best mom if you know you're not? Why are you acting like if you're a good mom if you're not? And they were saying this in front of her. And I didn't know how to respond to that. I was just like, come on, boys. Like, don't you remember this day when we went here? Don't you remember when we did this? Like, come on, don't you remember when we made this cake? And I was just, being very, very persistent. So eventually, after I think like 30 minutes, the mediator just said, okay, that's it, we're done. I went home. I didn't think much of it. I was like, okay, I did a good job. I was proving to this lady that I'm a good mom. And again, I was still feeling down. I was still really depressed. I think I reached my worst point in my life during those few months. I was still drinking. I was smoking weed, but in a way I was using it to relax from my anxiety attacks, because I would get nightmares. I had constant nightmares that my kids were drowning. I had constant nightmares that I was dying. I would, wake up and sweat, and I would wake up just crying. And my panic attacks were at its worst. So I thought by smoking, I was just gonna, I was gonna be fine. But I started drinking, and, I was smoking a lot. So those two together obviously weren't the best. So these thoughts were growing and growing that I wanted to die. And I kept doing those things where I kept, driving at night and trying to just crash. And I had a lot of, time on my hands, because I would drive from Menifee all the way back to Pomona to see my kids. So that whole drive, my thoughts were just going crazy, and I just wanted to die all the time. And like I said, I didn't think nobody really needed me. So 2020, July, we went back to court, and the judge decided that I could have visits with my boys on Saturdays from 10 to 6 p.m. And to me, that was a win. I was like, hell yeah, like, I'm going to get my kids for 8 hours, and I'm going to be able to take them places, and they're going to be able to get in my car, and, we're going to be able to drive somewhere. And I thought, okay, this is going to be the changing point. Like, I was working, my thoughts and my mental stability wasn't at its best, but I was happy that I was going to be able to spend more time with my kids. And in my mind, I was like, I'm going to spend more time with my kids, and they're going to see that all this stuff wasn't my fault. So I thought that it would be life-changing for me to be at the police station, because that's where they assigned the visits to be. I would have to pick. That was like the pickup point for me and my kids. So I thought, okay, this is going to be great. That's it. Like, this is gonna be what makes me the best mom ever. I had already started domestic violence classes through House of Ruth. It's an agency that helps battered women. So I had already started domestic violence classes. I was in parenting classes. I was going to Tri-City to get all this help. And I was seeing therapists left and right. I still wasn't at my best. I was still having these thoughts, and I still had all this stress, and I had all this debt from all these lawyers that I had to get. So mentally, I wasn't stable at all. So when my kids would get dropped off at the police station, it was really early. So I would always have snacks and drinks for them. But I always thought that, okay, I was going to be able to get there, pick up my kids, and go. I think the whole time that the visits were at the police station, only one time, I mean, I know it was only one time that I was able to get in the car with my kids and go somewhere. They never, ever wanted to get in the vehicle with me. Every single weekend, every single Saturday that came, it was a battle. It was a struggle. And it was always like, come on, boys, let's get in the car. Come on. It was all four of my boys at this time. I was able to see all my four boys. I was like, come on, boys, I'll take you guys to the beach. I'll buy you guys whatever you want. Like, let's go. Let's go have fun. Like, I wasn't even worried about their dad at that point. I wasn't stressed about that. I just wanted my boys. Like, I wanted to prove to them the type of mother I was and how much I loved them and how much I wanted to do everything for them. And it was like this goal of mine. Like, I just wanted to prove to my kids that I'm not what they said I was. I'm not what their dad said. So I continued and I tried, and every Saturday that came, it was always the same thing. No, we're not going to get in your car. That car, your boyfriend drives it. No, that car, it's an ugly car. We don't want to get inside of it. Like, you're just a bad mom. Why would we want to go with you? All you want to do is put us through this. And my boys, yeah, they were like 9, 10, but they talked like an adult. They knew. It's like they copied the words that their dad had told me before in the past. And he was brainwashing them this whole time. He was manipulating them. He wasn't being physically abusive, but he was being mentally abusive towards them. So, I was just trying to stay strong, and I would tell him, like, no, boys, like, I'm not like that. I love you guys. I'm here for you guys. And, things are going to get better. And, there's going to be a point when me and your dad can get along, and, he's going to have his family, and I'm going to have my family, and we're just going to be a happy family. And we ended up doing the visitations at the police station until October of that year. It was for a very long time, and it was very stressful, and my kids never came with me. And the only one time that they did, it took me about 2 hours to get them all in the vehicle. And I was so excited because I convinced them to finally go to the beach. And while we were at the police station, my kids had a phone, so their dad would be able to call them. And their dad, there was the first time that their dad actually was like, okay, come on, boys, get in the car with her. And I think for the most part, he was just doing it because he had to comply with the court order. So my kids finally got in the car. And I was like, okay, yes. And I was like, okay, we're going to go to Starbucks. We're going to go get coffee. I'm going to get you guys whatever you guys want to eat. And we went, and after so many years of being able to be with my kids alone, without nobody around, without being stressed about, my ex or anything, it was very weird for me. I didn't know the right things to say to my children. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know, like, I felt like a new mom with 4 little boys. And I ended up taking them to the beach. We took pictures, and it was the first time that I felt that my kids were free, that my kids were not being manipulated. They were just themselves. They were just free, and we were having a really good time. They were distant from me, and they would ask me questions, and they would question, like, oh, well, why aren't you with my papi, or why is this happening? But for the most part, it was a good, well spent time. And that day, to me, they had fun. I thought it was the best visit ever. I thought, wow, my kids really do love me. They don't say it, but they love me. And I love my kids, and I'm going to be the best mom for them because of this visit. And I got, I was really motivated. The next week after that, we went back to 0. It's like somebody told them, you can't have fun with your mommy. You can't do this with your mom. And obviously I knew who was doing this, and I knew the type of person that they live with, so I knew the type of mental abuse that he was, doing towards my kids. That following Saturday, they didn't want to get out of their dad's car. They didn't want to see me. They were just mad, and they're like, no, we didn't have fun with you. And that's one thing that they always did. They never admitted to having fun with me in front of their dad, ever. Their dad couldn't know that they were having fun with me. So October came, and we went back to court, and the judge, based on the mediation and based on everything, and minors counsel, because my kids were assigned a lawyer as well to protect their rights, they all decided that I could have we're going back to monitor visits. So I could have 4 hours of monitor visits with my kids a week. I was like, why? Why? We got to go, back to this place. And through this whole time since I left, since November, I had my criminal case going because of what happened that night, January 12th. So I had a family law lawyer and a criminal lawyer. And my criminal case was going on this whole time. And they were trying to give me charges. They were trying to press charges on me of domestic violence and child abuse, child endangerment on 2 counts for my 2 children that were present. And I was like, no, I'm going to fight this. So I ended up hiring a lawyer, and this lawyer, he really didn't do much for me. But we ended up going to court several times in this whole time that I was seeing my kids. So not only was I dealing with, seeing my kids under this stressful environment, but I was dealing with my criminal court case. And, it was courts every month going in, and my lawyer would ask, like, hey, can we reduce the charges? Can we do this? Can we do that? Eventually, my case ended up going to trial. So I'm doing these monitor visits with my kids, and I'm dealing with my criminal case. And I tell my lawyer, like, I'm going to fight my case to the end. I'm going to prove to the world that I never did this, that I never abused, that I never put a hand on this man, and that, I felt like empowered. I'm going to stand up for myself, and I'm going to prove to everybody that it's not true what he said. I told my lawyer, what do you think? What do you think I should do? He said, it's up to you. You choose what you want to do. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take my court to trial. I'm going to take my case to trial. I had to pay $6,000 in order to take my case to trial. And it was during COVID. So I took my case to trial, and we had 12 jurors. I didn't understand why other people had to decide my fate. I didn't understand why I had to be in this courtroom facing this judge and facing this DA, because the DA was the one pressing charges on me. And, my lawyer presented my case. My lawyer never talked about me being abused. Never. He never brought it up. He always said, no, let's not do that because it's just going to bring up more problems, which I always question, like, why wouldn't you want to prove my case? Why wouldn't you want to show these people that this man hurt me, and this is why I am the way I am, and this is why this happened? And I never asked. I didn't know. I wasn't educated. I didn't know nothing about laws or my rights. So I just said, okay, let's go to trial. Let's handle this the way that you think that, you might want to do. And that was it. So the day that led up to the trial, he kept telling me, okay, this is what we're going to bring up in court. This is what we're going to do. I was like, okay, fine. And we went into the courtroom. The judge presented my case. My lawyer presented my case, and the DA presented their case. The juror heard everybody's side, and that was it. That was the end of that court. The next court, the DA says, we have witnesses. We have, obviously my ex-husband, but your kids are also going to testify. My lawyer had already kind of told me, like, okay, this might happen. Your kids might testify. They might go up on that stand, and they might testify. And the truth is, the jury is going to believe these kids because they're small. But I was like, no, my kids are not going to do that. My kids know that I didn't do that. My kids are not going to go up there and say that. I just thought that was going to happen because they're my kids. They know that I was never hurtful towards them or their dad. So that day, their dad goes into court, and he says, yeah, she did this, that. She pulled my hair. She threw me to the floor. She was the one being aggressive. And the whole time I'm sitting there, and I'm like, please don't let my kids go up there. Please, like, I'm praying to God, and I'm like, please don't have my kids go up there. Like, I won't be able to survive that. And a few minutes go by, and my oldest goes up there. And, the DA, my ex's lawyer goes up there and, questions my kids, obviously very humble, very nice. And my son says, yeah, that woman over there, that girl, I think he said, yeah, her over there, she threw my dad to the floor and pulled his hair. I did my best to keep my composure. I did my best to, not cry, not get upset. And then they call up my second son, and he goes up there, and he says the same exact thing my other son said. And I was like, okay, relax, don't get upset, don't cry. Kept my cool the whole time. The it ended, and the jury was dismissed, and obviously we had to wait for a few days for them to make a decision. This whole time, obviously, I'm an emotional wreck. I'm not mentally stable. I just wanted to die. I just had these horrible thoughts. And then the day came where I had to go back to court, and they were going to tell me the decision from the jury. And they tell me, the jury, one of the persons goes up there, and they say, we find Vianey guilty for domestic violence. And that was it. They were able to take away the child endangerment charges. My lawyer was able to remove those, so I had just domestic violence charges. And my lawyer just looks at me and he says, it's gonna, it's okay, it's okay. He acted like if nothing, like if that wasn't a big deal, like, okay, you have these charges, but it'll be fine. And the judge tells me, like, okay, you're gonna be on probation for 3 years. You have to pay this fine to the DV fund. You have to do community service. You have to be enrolled in domestic violence. And the lawyer's just telling me all these things, and the judge too. And I couldn't believe it. Not only did I not have custody of my children, but now I'm a criminal. I'm a criminal to the society. I'm a criminal in my kids' eyes. I'm a criminal in the eyes of my family. I'm the criminal. I'm the one that caused this abuse. Like, everybody saw me this way. I had rough nights, and I had evil thoughts. But that night, that was it. That was it. That was my last straw. I said, okay, I can't have my kids. And now this judge is telling me that I'm a criminal and I'm a bad person and I'm guilty for doing this to this man that I didn't even do. And I just felt like my whole world had shattered. I remember going home and my boyfriend was there, and he didn't even know what to tell me. I just remember I laid down, he hugged me, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried. I had panic attacks back to back. I was miserable. I was devastated. I just wanted everything to end. I didn't even want to see my kids again. I was just like, I'm done. Like, why do I have to be here? In the back of my mind, I knew that I shouldn't have thought that way. And I knew that I needed to be strong for myself and for my children. But I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know what to do. I was like completely lost. So October comes around and they tell me, okay, you have, the visitations. I started doing the visitations with my kids. And I ended up doing monitored visits with my children for about 2 years. 2 years, from 2020 to 2022. We were in this house, and, we were a big family. It was me and 4 boys. So they would always give us the living room. I was lucky enough that the monitor always told me, like, you have a big family, so I'm going to keep you in the living room. And, not all the time did I get to see my 4 kids, but, it was either my 4 boys or my 2 youngest or 3 of my boys. The whole time that we were doing the visits, that I was seeing them, me and their dad were talking through this app called Talking Parents, and it's an app that the court, assigns to you. It's where they keep track of what you're talking to, what conversations you're having with your ex-partner. So every time one of my kids' birthday was coming, he would send me a message and tell me, hey, the boys are sick. The boys aren't coming to the visit. And I would get upset, like, okay, it's their birthday. Like, I want to see them. I want to spend time with them. I wouldn't see them. My youngest, his birthday came, I didn't see them. And then my oldest, his birthday came, I didn't see them. And then my second, and every birthday, every special occasion, I wasn't able to spend time with my kids. And I always made a report, I always documented everything. And I always made sure that I sent a message through that app. And I always told the monitor, like, can you please document this? Because this isn't right. Like, he knows that it hurts me not to see my children on these special days. And he still did it. And I always stood up for myself, and I kept telling him, and nobody did anything. I used to reach out to Minors Council. I used to send them emails constantly, like, hey, like, I can't see my kids because, it's, he's saying that they're sick, but there's no papers, there's no documents stating that my kids are sick. Like, why can't I see them? It would take days before this person would reply to me. I would reach out to my family lawyer, and I would tell her, like, can you please help me? Like, I'm not seeing my kids. And it would kill me not to see my kids because I was only seeing them for a few hours. And then the few hours that I had, this man would just take them away from me. And this happened the whole 2 years that we were there. And, I was working on myself. I was going to therapy. I actually lost my job because of the criminal case. And I was getting paid really good money. I had a really good job. And, at the time, I had to pay child support for my kids. I had to pay $800 a month. So my job was able to let me provide for my children. So I lost my job, and it was just hard. I had all this going on. And I was trying to pay these lawyers so that I can still see my kids and I could, keep up with everything with my children. And every time something happened with my kids and I would try to document it and tell these people, nobody ever helped me. I ended up trying to do things on my own. So I fired my family lawyer, and I did things by myself for a little bit. And it was, it was an empowerment. It was powerful for me to do that because I took control of my life. I was like, okay, I'm going to talk to this lawyer. I'm going to send this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to document this. Never got anywhere. Visitations with my kids were a roller coaster. I had all this going on, and then sometimes visits were good, sometimes they were bad. Sometimes they were in bad moods, sometimes they were in good moods. I was lucky if I had one good visit with my kids, and that one good visit was me, like, playing with it, and I was able to get close to them and without them getting upset or mad or trying to push me away. But after one good visit, I had 20 bad visits because they couldn't be happy. And when I would, when the monitor would write down that, my kids were happy, it's like something would happen, and then the next visit, they were angry, they were mad. They were like, no, we never had fun with you. We never had fun in this visit. And I kind of knew where that was coming from. I knew it was, from this person, their dad. And that continued. Eventually, I was already almost done with my domestic violence classes. I was on it. Like, I had finished my community service. I paid my fine. And we had to go back to court because we had to finalize our divorce. And it was February 2020. Went into that courtroom, and I had to see this man again. He was there. We both went in, and the judge, looks at our case, and he says, okay, I see that you're not working. We're going to set your child support to 0. They set my child support to 0, and they decided that I could have visits with my kids, but we no longer needed to have a monitor that I had to pay. They decided that my ex's girlfriend would be able to monitor our visitations, and I chose my sister. So the judge wrote it all up, and he said, I just need these 2 people to sign these papers, and, it's going to be okay if these 2 people monitor the visits. And they decided that I can have these visitations with my kids at the park, at Lincoln Park in Pomona. I was so happy that day. I remember thinking, finally, my kids are going to be free. Finally, they're not going to have to be in this crowded room. They're not going to have to watch movies every visit. They're going to be free. They're going to be able to run around. And I'm not going to feel like I'm a bad person because there's somebody here in my ear controlling my every move, telling me like, hey, don't get too close to your children, because that's what was happening, like in my visits. I couldn't get near my kids. I couldn't even try hugging them because they would tell me like, hey, you're too close, or even my kids would push me away. So I was beyond happy. This was my like motivation, like, okay, I'm going to be better. I'm going to have more time with my kids. And my ex's girlfriend at the time, she had a big role in this whole process, because when my ex didn't want to drop off my kids at the visitation, she would have to go drop them off. She was the one pushing my kids, like, get out of the car. Come on, you got to go with your mom. Come on, boys. If you guys get out, I'm going to buy you Starbucks. Like, she did a lot, and she had the stress of dealing with my ex. So when I found out she was going to be the monitor, like she was going to be there, I was extremely happy too. I was like, okay, she's a good woman. Like, I trust her. And my sister was going to be there, so I was extremely happy. Once that happened, we finalized our divorce, and the visitation started at the park. Everything started off great. I was going to the park with my kids. Obviously his girlfriend was there, my sister, but sometimes like if I needed more time with them, they would be okay with it. And they would let me talk to my kids, and nobody was like on us. So I had all the freedom in the world, and I did my best to try to talk to my kids and explain to them like, boys, I love you. I always made sure I told them every time I saw them, I love you, I love you. During this whole time, my oldest, he wasn't really going to see me. He was the only one that never wanted to see me. He was the only one that wanted to stay completely away from me. And, all these years had passed, and I never really grasped why he never came to the visits. I knew he was angry at me, and I knew he felt like I abandoned him because obviously he was abused as well. So I knew that there was that between us. Like, he knew I wasn't there for him. So I never pressured him to do anything. So March 12th, my birthday, he pulls up, my ex, he pulls up with his girlfriend, and I'm there at the park waiting with my sister. And my son, my oldest son, he had finally came to a visit. He was in the passenger seat, and I was like, I saw my son, like I hadn't seen him in a long time, and I seen him, and I remember breaking down, and I was just crying, and I had a panic attack because I was full of emotion. Like, I seen my baby's face, like, this is my king, like, to me, I have him here, and he's my king, he's my baby, he's my everything. So I seen him, and I was just so excited, and I asked their stepmom at the moment, I was like, would it be okay if I approach him? Like, I just want to go and say something to him. And she said, yeah. And I asked their dad, and he said, yeah, that's fine. So I get close to my son, and I tell him, like, thank you. I told him, like, thank you, Papa, for being here. Like, thank you for letting me see you. Like, I was just so happy. I was like, thank you. And I tried grabbing his hand because he was like this. So I tried to put my hand inside their car, and he wouldn't let me. But the fact that he was there in the vehicle gave me hope. I was like, oh, I got to see my baby. Like, and he was so big, and I was just happy. So that day for my birthday, his girlfriend, my ex's girlfriend, brought me a little cake, and they put like this table cover on the picnic table, and my kids were there, and they surprised me. They had like balloons and flowers for me, I think. And like, I found out that I guess it was my ex, trying to be nice. We weren't really arguing then. We weren't really having any problems. We were really not even talking. But I guess, I thought, and she thought this was him trying. So after that, I found out that my ex and his girlfriend split up. So she couldn't do the visits anymore. And my sister had a very demanding job. So obviously her schedule was really hard as well, and we couldn't really coordinate on setting up a day to see my kids. So, I was okay with my ex, and we weren't having any problems. So I said, hey, you guys don't have to come anymore. I made the decision to say, you guys don't have to come anymore. I'm having an okay visit with my kids, and, we're bonding, so it's all right. You guys don't even have to come anymore. So both of them stopped coming to the visit, but now my ex would drop him off, and he would stay there at the park. And he would just stay behind, and he would just see what me and my kids were doing the whole time. And I was getting, the mental help. I thought I was at a good place. But every time this man was around, he made me weak. He made me question myself. He made me question the type of mother I was. He made me question, my decisions that I made while I was with my kids. And he never really got off the car, but he was just there. And I think his presence was enough to intimidate me. And then all of a sudden, my kids started telling me, like, you're a bad mom. And they would just make these comments, and I knew there was something going on, but I didn't want to cause a fight, and I didn't want to, stop the good connection that I had with that I thought I had with my kids. So I didn't say nothing. I was just like, I love you boys. And I always made sure to tell them, like, I love you boys. I'm always going to be here for you guys. And I'm always going to love you. And if you ever need anything, I'm always going to be here. So, I thought visits were going good. But then my ex started getting out of the vehicle. And he started getting closer and closer and closer to where we were at. And I didn't see it wrong at the moment. I thought, okay, we're done with the courts. I'm done with that life of, having to go back to court and fight for my children. So little by little, he started, taking over our visits. He started just being there, and he would talk about himself, and I was just there listening, like, I didn't think it was wrong. I was just there, and he started manipulating me again. He started the mind games with me, and I started falling into what he was saying again. And it wasn't like to get back with him, but it was like, well, if you want to see the kids, this is going to happen. Or, how about this weekend you give me this money and this is going to happen. And it was just like the mind games all over again, the manipulation, the words that he used in the past, he was bringing them up again. And my oldest son was actually going to the visits, and I was seeing my son. And, I had an okay relationship with my other 3 children, but obviously with my oldest, it was the hardest. So I thought, well, if my son is here, I don't care if this man is here. I don't care about him. So, it's okay. I'll deal with it. And this happened for about, these visits happened, I don't know, from February all the way to like November. And I think I found myself falling into the same behaviors as before. I started believing this man. I started, falling for his mind games. I started doubting myself. I was, getting depressed again. And I feel like he was my, like, he made me weak. I'm supposed to be surrounded by people who give me strength, but he just made me weak. So, I'm having these visits with my kids at the park, and, their dad is there, and he's in my visits with my kids. He's invading my time with them. And, instead of, I came back to the cycle where I was making these visits about him. I was listening to him instead of listening to my kids. And yeah, I was getting help. I was going to therapy. I was actually, almost finishing up my DV classes that I was mandated to do by the court. But I still wasn't mentally stable. I really wasn't. And I think that's one thing that we forget about, and we lose ourselves, is throughout this whole process and being, a victim, is my mental stability. I didn't have that. Even after this whole, me being seen by these therapists, I was going to a mental facility that helped us get therapy, and, they would have these group sessions. Even with all that help, I was still unstable. And he knew that, this whole time, this person that caused me harm knew my weaknesses. And I thought I was strong, I was like, okay, I'm at a good place. I'm seeing my kids. I'm spending time with them on the weekend. But I knew I wasn't good. And I knew it because I saw what I was doing to myself when I was with him in the visits. And like I said, these visits were aimed to be with my kids. The whole purpose was to get to know my kids again, to make them, realize that I loved them and I wasn't that woman that he portrayed me to be. So I began with those thoughts again. I began doubting myself. I was questioning the type of mother I was and what I was capable of doing. And I went down that path. I wanted to start drinking. And mind you, like I had my kids with me for, several hours. Yeah, he was there, but my happiness was my kids. But I was still being suckered into what he was saying, and I was still his puppet. So one night, I got my phone, and I don't think this was probably the best way to do it, but I text my son, my second son, because I wasn't able to text my oldest, and I told him, you know what, son? I love you. I'm always going to be here for you. I'm never going to give up on you. And I'm always going to be here waiting for you until the day I die. I'm going to be here waiting for you when you come and tell me, Mom, I want to talk to you. Mom, I need answers. I'm going to be here for you. And obviously I worded it a little bit different, but the whole message to him was, son, I'm sorry, but I need to stop. I need to better myself. I need to become a better mother. I need to, get help. I need to find out who I really am, because right now, yeah, I'm seeing you guys, but I'm not there. I'm not mentally stable, and I don't know what to do with myself. And if I can't be a good mother to you, and if I can't give you and portray the strength, how am I even going to expect you to respect me? How am I going to expect you and your brothers to love me unconditionally and give me a second chance? So, I finished up that message, and I pretty much decided that I was going to step away from my kid's life. And honestly, that was probably another one of the hardest things I had to do. I took a step back. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I realized, like, you're not who you're supposed to be. If you don't get out of this mess, if you don't get help, if you don't look for help, you're never going to be the woman that you're supposed to be, and you're never going to be a great example for your children. So till now, it has been a year and a half since the last time I saw my 4 kids. My oldest, he's already going to be 15 this year. My second, he's going to be 14. And my third is going to be 11, and my last is going to be 10. So it's been rough this whole time without seeing my boys, and I miss them like crazy, and there's nights where I can't sleep. I'm a total mess. But the reality is, I did this and I made this change for myself, so that when my boys are ready to come to me and they tell me, like, Mom, or call me by my name, because obviously they don't call me Mom, but if they tell me, hey, I want to talk to you, I'm gonna tell them, all right, I'm ready. Like, now I'm ready. I've received therapy left and right. I am beyond grateful, because I have the best support system I could ever ask for. My boyfriend, he has my back for anything. He supports me unconditionally. He loves me. He respects me. He gives me my place. He's encouraging. He has my back, like I said. And I learned that these were all healthy with time. Nobody taught me this. Nobody told me that, healthy relationship looks like this. No, I learned all of this by myself, and obviously with the help of therapy. And, there's a lot of great organizations in Pomona that I'm familiar with that offer great resources. Tri-City, House of Ruth. I believe there's another one called Project Sisters. There's so many information out there that so many people can benefit from. You guys just don't know. And like I said, it's been rough, but through therapy, through my support system, I reconnected with my mother. After being separated from her for almost 10 years, I finally got to talk to her, and I finally opened up, and I started telling her, like, I went through all of this, and now she's going to actually be able to hear it and know everything with details. And, you know, it took time, took a lot of time. Unfortunately, I never got to reconnect with my father, but I'm not mad anymore. I think I healed from what he did to me. I'm not angry. I forgive him for what he did to me. He dealt with the situations how he knew, and I can't be mad at him. You know, he was limited on knowledge as well. He didn't know how to be a great father, so I can't be mad. And if someday, you know, we decide to reconnect, I think it'll work out. And, you know, with time that'll come. Now, I think I'm just ready to be the best version of me ever. And if there's something that I can share with the world to any other DV victim out there, and, you know, survivors, now if you're a survivor, is you're not alone. You may think you are, and you may think, man, I'm crazy. Man, these thoughts in my head, I'm the bad person. They're just momentarily, and it'll pass. You just have to dig deep within you, and you have to really want change. And making a change involves you looking for resources, asking around. Now we have social media. We have all these platforms, Instagram. I mean, it's we have all these resources. We just have to want to look, and you need to want change. And, you know, I got to that point where I want to change, and I'm making it happen. I'm enrolled in a volunteer program at House of Ruth, and it's a 40-hour training. And what I'm training for is to eventually be able to pick up that hotline when DV victims call and they ask for help. I'm training to be a counselor, to be able to work inside House of Ruth and you know, be a receptionist, or be able to manage events with the other coordinators. So that's one part of my change. That's one part of my healing process. But eventually, you know, I want to be able to work at House of Ruth. I want to be able to be that hope for somebody else. And, you know, thanks to Making Changes through their channel, through their Instagram page, that's what I want. I want to be able to give another victim, man or woman, that hope that you'll get through it. Just have faith. And if you believe in God, pray to God. You know, you have to really, really want change. And if you believe in him, and if you pray to him, and if you ask for, you know, for strength, he will give it to you. You know, I went through all these stuff in my life, and, you know, I never thought that I was going to be at peace with myself. I never thought that I was going to love myself. I always thought, like, oh, you know, my ex said I was a piece of shit. He used to tell me that I wasn't going to be worth nothing, that I was never going to do nothing, and that I was always going to be a bad mom because I had bad parents. And I'm not. You know, with time I healed, and I learned that, you know, if you work on yourself, you're going to be that person that you want to be. So there is a million resources out there. There is help. And if anybody out there has any questions, or you know, you just want to know more information about House of Ruth, any therapy, any parenting classes, if anybody wants information about public defenders or anything that has to do with the court, filing a restraining order, any type of resources, even, you know, finding out how to get bail if you get locked up, or knowing what questions to answer when you get arrested, all of that, you know, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm sure we're going to have my Instagram page. You guys can definitely reach out, ask questions. And if you guys don't want to contact me, you guys can always contact Making Changes. And, you know, obviously they'll get the word to me, and I'll be glad to share as much resources as I can. I want to take this time to reach out to as many people as possible. And I want to ask, and if anybody out there has any resources, any source of information, any tools, any, contact information that can help me regain custody of my children, or that can just help me in general to be, a better mom, a better human, I would appreciate it, and I would, be beyond grateful if you guys would share that resources with me. My custody battle has been very long and very, very, very stressful, and I never really got the correct resources. So if anybody out there, has any information, my email is vcornejo0530@yahoo.com. Feel free to send me an email and share any information that you may have. Thank you. I know with social media, especially YouTube, this will eventually get to my children. And I know for the most part, I think they already kind of see my social media. But obviously I haven't been able to, tell them anything. But now I can. And boys, I just want to tell you guys that I love you. I'm sorry for any harm that I caused you mentally. I'm sorry for the stress that I put you through. I'm sorry for not having your back. I'm sorry for not protecting you. I'm sorry for not being there how I was supposed to. I'm sorry for not being there. If you guys had your first girlfriend, I'm sorry for just not being there. And all I want in this life, and the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, and the reason why I want to become better and I want to be mentally stable, is so that one day I get a second chance. That's all I want, a second chance to prove to you boys that I love you and that I never gave up. I was just healing. I was just working on myself. That's all I want. And whenever you boys are ready, I'm going to be here, standing tall, waiting for that message, that phone call, that DM, that email, whatever it is. I'm going to be here ready, waiting for you boys. Even if it takes 5 years, I don't care. 2 years, even if it takes you a few days after you see this video, I'm going to be here waiting for you, excited and ready to tackle whatever it is that you're bringing to me. I'm going to be ready to be your mother, the mother that wasn't there for you guys. And I think it's important that I tell you boys that the person that I was when I did live with you guys isn't the same person now. The mother that you saw, the angry person that you saw back then, she's not here anymore. She's not here. She's gone. My past doesn't define me. It doesn't make me a bad person. I went through what I went through, and I healed, and I'm just going to be ready for you boys. Going to be here whenever you guys want to reach out to me. For a long time, and I'm probably going off topic, but for a long time, that's why I was angry. Because I wanted to prove to the world that I wasn't the person that he was saying, and I lost focus on what really mattered, and it was my children. I wanted to make sure that the world knew that I wasn't what he was saying, but in reality, that didn't matter. When you're going through this, that doesn't matter. Getting back at the person who harmed you doesn't matter. What matters is that you heal. What matters is that you become a better person. What matters is that you heal from the trauma. And just because I went through that, and just because, there was times where I was depressed and I wanted to kill myself and I wanted to end my suffering, it doesn't mean that was going to define me. It doesn't mean that I was just going to end up being that and being what everybody said. It meant that, I was going through it. Yes, I had these thoughts. Yes, I may not have been the role model, but I was going through stuff myself. And with time, I healed. I got the help. I got therapy. I went to counseling. And I'm here now. And I'm stronger than ever. I hope that me sharing my story gives somebody else on the other side, you guys watching, man, woman, gives you guys the courage to stand up and share your story. I want to thank you guys for listening to me, for taking the time to listen to my story. And I want to thank Making Changes for giving me this opportunity. If I wouldn't have seen their page, I would have never been able to sit here in this chair and tell you guys what I went through. And I wouldn't be able to share this message and say, you're not alone. You're going to get through it. If you think you're not, believe me, you will. You will get the help. And like I said, thank you guys. Thank you, Making Changes. You guys are going to change lives.